that's gonna be a very valuable, interesting, enriching read. I recommend that to anyone who gets into crypto. Before you touch just a dollar, before you think I'm gonna invest something, I'm gonna do something, really read that, because I think first of all you're gonna get like the real vision, like what was in the mind, what's the core vision, what's the idea of this, why has this been built, like why did Satoshi build this and everyone like after him, right? And I think do this, read. It's not a lot of content in it, but it's I should get a book out, right? Bitcointalk pre 2011, and just like print it there and say read. You want to get into the crypto, read.
Layer 1 is a podcast and community dedicated to helping you master all things crypto. We'll be bringing you the best interviews with project executives, technical analysis for trading of the most popular cryptocurrencies, and insight into what's actually happening behind the scenes.
As you join us each episode, you're going to hear about tokens, fundraisers, investments, and even crypto conspiracies. But please remember that nothing we say should be considered financial or legal advice.
Come join us on this journey, and welcome to Layer 1.
Good morning, good evening, good night. It is another episode of Layer 1. We're coming to you on a Friday, but you should be hearing this episode on your wonderful Saturday. Hopefully everyone is having a great time. To everyone that's been following Layer 1, thank you so much. You guys are really pushing this product forward, and we're happy to have you be part of our community. So we have a great episode this week. I've got my main man, the dynamic duo, right, Dimitri? What's going on?
Exactly. Yeah, man. I'm excited. We obviously have an exciting guest again. Yeah, this is the real dynamic duo. I don't know about the other one, so Mike is out of this interview today, but so we get the pleasure to talk to who today, Mike? Sorry, Q?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
So I've got Kadan Stadelmann today. It's going to be a great interview. He's one of the only guests that has a better background than Dimitri, which we'll get here in a second, but he is the CTO of Komodo. It's an open and composable smart contract platform built on multi-chain architecture, and that is a lot to get your head around. But that's why we have Kadan here today on Layer 1, and he's going to explain all things Komodo, all things markets, as well as his vibrant background in crypto. So without further ado, Kadan, how are you doing today?
Awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having us, man.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to get into this discussion. So let's start with that crypto background, or maybe even prior to crypto. Let's start with your background, kind of maybe in tech and just growing up in general, and how that led you to Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I had like a very, very technical background, right? I've been like in front of a computer half my life. I've been raised in a Northern African country, already had like a close relationship to the digital world. Right, my father was a self-taught coder besides his work in a diplomatic course. So I got in touch with with technology, but not just computer gaming or how to use a calculator, but really like how to build stuff, right? How to fix stuff, right? That was stuff like that I was taught like really in early young ages. So I got in touch with something called like Visual Basic, right? It was like one of the very first kind of call it ant developer programming language, and that was also like how I basically built really my first app, right? If you want to call it like that. A couple years later, yeah, I've basically settled over to Europe, right, where I enjoyed my entire education. So I've been like here, like for primary school. I've joined like a very technical high school. I've basically concluded this high school with like a specific technical diploma in engineering, in software development. I mean, our main focus back in that day, and it was also, I think, what basically laid the base foundation for my later career, was a lot, like OPSEC, right? How to build intrusion detection systems, how to notice when someone is like messing around with your network, right? From an external standpoint. We've really also learned, right, how to conduct a middle in the man attack, right? How can I spy, right, between two connections? And I think like we learned a lot of like fundamental stuff in IT that helped me as well as my colleagues to look at this like from a very low level perspective. So we try to break stuff down, right? Really, if we kind of like really understand it, we'll destroy it, right? To get it into small pieces. And yeah, I think that's also what most of the people like here that work for Komodo and with Komodo that have like common, right, in mind is this very strong analytical thinking, this way of thinking. And it's amazing because I'm learning every day. I learn something new from my colleagues, from the devs I work with, right, from the people I work with, that I interact with. And I think that's like one of the most valuable things, like for me personally, right, besides like the technical aspect, is also like this intersocial aspect also in the community, also something that really reflects Komodo's vision.
Yeah, I got that vibe from your recent interview with Charlie Shrem, and you guys talked about the early days of Bitcointalk
Oh,
and
that was
all of
so
those things.
nice.
Yeah,
The
I want
IRC
to.
times, like, I mean, there were times like literally that we were like a bunch of people. We were sitting there, we had like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday evening night. Most people like went online, started like coming like active like on IRC, especially like weekends. It wasn't. I remember the times when I like joined the initial like Bitcoin IRC chat. We were like 20, 30 people around in the IRC channel, right? It was a lot of like, yeah, there was some technical talk, but I think the most interesting and the most inspiring talk that took place in the IRC, but also on Bitcointalk, like everything that was like pre 2012, pre 2011, right? Before you had all these ICOs and the altcoins, and basically before it was about money, before it was about some dollar evaluation, you had all this social, right, anarchistic, this cyberpunks thing, going on there. And I mean, you could really feel, because we all knew decentralized technology. If you go back, Napster, Kazaa, Emule, torrent networks, things were built up. No one could destroy it, right? We were hearing like specific seeders got arrested, and people went to prison for file sharing and stuff. But at the end, it wasn't possible to kill a network like that. Okay, that's like one of the probably the most fascinating aspects of crypto, right? And this underlying technological vision of decentralized networks, that no one can like kill it. You'd have like to shut down the internet and the entire underlying infrastructure in order to kill a decentralized network. And this understanding, and I mean, it gave us this feeling of power. Like, this technology is powerful. This technology has the power to cause a financial revolution, right? It's something like we all agree on. But I think furthermore, it's not just a financial revolution. To be honest with you, I believe like decentralized technology, real decentralized and trustless cryptographic networks have the power to cause social and economic revolution, right? On top of the financial revolution, because nowadays, unfortunately, the social as well as the economic layer is heavily based on this monetary foundation, right, which I personally believe is like very, very wrong, right? So yeah, we'll see where this leads us to. But just like to touch base again on that, I mean, that's also, I think, what always like when I get back like to people I met like 5-6 years ago. I mean, of course, we're all like somewhere else. Most of us aren't even like just working pure on Bitcoin or Bitcoin related projects anymore, but like went into the altcoin or alternative second, third generation blockchain project. But we still like have this in common, with which we all share. Although this all got like very much like corporate style, and I mean, right, I mean, you see what's happening to our industry. We still have like these core values, and it's something that's very, very nice. It makes me like happy, like when I talk with Charlie, and we had like a little off-record talk as well, and I'm sure you get the sense like what sort of talk that was. It's just great to have this sort of conversations with people, and okay, there are a lot like same-minded good people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that ethos. And it's always good talking to, like, for example, me and Dimitri have been in crypto since, I believe, 2016, that time frame. So we're getting to that point where we're starting to maybe be a little bit OG status, but not true OGs like yourself and those that were on those Bitcointalk threads. So I do appreciate that ethos. And I think you guys kind of like holding the banner forward in those early days, especially when things were kind of still kind of this small community and just pushing things forward then meant so much to the people now that are kind of getting the fruits of your labor in some sorts. So before we move on and pass this Bitcoin thread talk, I do want to hit one more thing. Were there any stories like that specifically on those threads interested you or just put the light bulb in your head?
I mean, of course, look, if you just ask me now like this, I mean, I would have like to sit down, have a beer with you, and I'll give you like 100 stories. But right now, the first thing that came to my mind, like in a second, right? But I can't remember if this was like pre 211 or after it, right? So I don't get the right time frame. But you remember there was a guy, he was like really sort of an activist, right? In our roles, and I don't want to like call the name out now, but it's a story. I mean, if you just like Google, you'll find it immediately. They came. I mean, they basically swatted his house. They got like all his coins, this, that. In the end, it was because I think he sold a few coins, but they really like wrecked him very, very hard, like really bad. This guy, we're all like helped him a little bit because I mean, he got into like situation where you're not able like to pay next month's bills and stuff, right? And that's like really, really bad. It's just not human, right? If someone who can't go like get food and has family, and all this stuff. I mean, humans do mistakes, right? Go for a punishment if you really think it's necessary and the only way to teach a human, but don't like destroy someone's existence, right? I mean, this guy's job was mostly like really basically that was his everyday job that was taken away from him. And I remember his wife basically got like active. If I'm not mistaken, he was even arrested for a short time frame or something happened, and she basically took his account on Bitcointalk. And it was like a sort of a drama for us. It was something like really a very, very negative experience, right, for all of us. And I think that was also the point of time where like many people who's like been active in this area rethought, right? Like resettled new geolocation, moving to like the digital nomads lifestyle. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people like just this was like the wake up call, yeah, I mean this is just one of like many stories. There are like many stories out. I mean in my early times I've been also like running sort of like hackathons, like there've been like a couple hackathons on Bitcointalk. There've been like a few nice stories there. And if you really want to get the nice, interesting stuff, get to Bitcointalk and read everything that's pre 211, 212. That's got to be a very valuable, interesting, enriching read. I recommend that to anyone who gets into crypto. Before you touch just $1, before you think I'm going to invest something, I'm going to do something, really. Read that, because I think, first of all, you're going to get like the real vision, like what was in the mind. What's the core vision? What's the idea of this? Why has this been built? Like, why did Satoshi build this and everyone like after him, right? And I think do this, read. It's not a lot of content, but it's, I should get a book out, right? Bitcointalk pre 2011, and just like print it there and say, read. You want to get into the crypto, read.
That's awesome. Yeah, we get different kind of takes on how people get into Bitcoin and like what gets them exciting, and it's crazy how it ranges. Some people will get in because they were gamers, right? And the trade was done, let's say, in Bitcoin. Some people get in because of that, owning your own money and so on, and being able to not be restricted by the countries and so on. And some people, outright just say they got in because of the drugs, which is crazy, right? So like,
True.
there's many different stories.
I mean, the first pump, like that's provable. The first pump was caused by Silk Road and these dark markets and this drug trafficking and all this stuff. It's very
crazy.
Interesting.
What would Satoshi say to that? Basically he created this thing and then bam, this thing started get used to, for drugs instead of like, what it was intended to. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, so
it's very interesting. Yeah,
you have a great background, and thanks for sharing that story.
Thanks for asking. I think it's an important factor
for sure. But let's get into some of the Komodo, right? So let's check out what are you guys doing? What makes your network kind of special and unique in a way, compared to maybe other protocols? Kind of a little bit talk about the multi-chain stuff that you guys are doing, and give us kind of a brief description there.
Sure. Okay, as you guys already like mentioned, right, as Q mentioned before, so Komodo is like basically an open and composable smart chain platform, right? And it was built on an architecture that we'd call like a multi-chain architecture. So I mean, well, what does this now mean? Okay, let's first like dive a little bit into the multi-chain architecture, because I think that's the underlying arc, and we gotta understand this design. Most nowadays smart contract platforms, blockchain platforms, etc. Okay, let's say Ethereum, are based on a single chain architecture, right? So there's just like one globally used blockchain, and you have like basically the entire blockchain operations, all network transactions, etc. It's all funneled through the same layer. Okay, so this is like what a single chain architecture is. Okay, it brings limitations. Such a chain architecture, right, is a sort of limited when it comes to the resources and just to the bandwidth that such a chain has and the capabilities that it has. I'm sure you remember like CryptoKitties. I bring this example up every time. Okay, I mean, a few years ago, it clogged up the chain, right? There were like really problems. I remember gas fee went high, and I were like just a few issues, and we just thought, okay, first of all, a single chain architecture makes a dev like not like he's not independent anymore. He's reliant on this parental chain, on this single chain as a very base layer, right? And that's wrong. So we said, okay, with Komodo, right, we want the multi-chain architecture that you'd be able to scale. First of all, with Komodo, if you create your chain, it's not a smart contract that runs on our chain. No, you literally get your own chain, right? That's also a reason why we call it multi-chain architecture, because our network, our ecosystem consists of like multiple different blockchains, right? But now each of these single blockchains that was created with Komodo, first of all, is like fully, totally independent, right? No matter what, even if we say Komodo disappears tomorrow, your chain's still here. It has inherited all of Komodo's functionalities, okay? But I think like one of the most and more interesting aspects beside this independence is that with a multi-chain architecture, you're basically also able to spin up so-called sync chains that actually scale up the bandwidth of your base chain. So let's say you have a blockchain and you've implemented like some gambling system, right? And like a ton of transactions, and you reach the limit, right? Your chain has hit the limit with the block size, whatever. What you could do now is you basically launch up like a little side chain, and this side chain is connected like on a consensus level to the base chain, and it will always ensure that the tokens on both sides, right, the total circulation is in sync. So if you send coins to another network participant and he's on that second chain, you basically have like a consensus rule which will take the coins from chain X, destroys them, and recreate them on chain B, right? That's like basically what happens behind the lines. So this is a process that can be replicated like infinite. So I mean, we've run like a small experiment last 1-2 years ago, just like to crack major credit cards transactions per second, right? Because that was like something that was done back in the day, and we did it. We cracked, I don't remember the exact numbers, like 10-20,000 transactions in a second, just like for a proof of concept. And we've basically proved that we can like scale up a cluster with the same scheme, and we'll like hit 1 million transactions per second. It's no problem. And this is like this big value of the multi-chain architecture, the independence. You can scale infinite, right? No matter what, 100 millions of transactions per second, if required. If you spin up this infrastructure, you can do this, right? Okay, and then the second big part with the Komodo platform is that's an open and composable smart chain platform. So your chain isn't just a straight copy or runtime fork of Komodo. No, you're able to basically attach or activate a sort of blockchain plugins, consensus plugins, right? We call them CCs. These CCs are custom consensus rules. So there are like many different CCs, and the CC technology, it's basically the smart contracting tech of Komodo. It allows you to implement whatever like consensus modification you want. Let's say you want to implement a dice, a dice game, or a lotto, or an oracle system, right, for trustless data distribution. I mean, these are just like a few of many such potential use cases, right? You can really implement all of these with our CC technology. And the really fancy thing is this becomes a plugin. Anyone in the ecosystem can take this plugin and just activate it, right? As long as it's not like a company that wants some proprietary stuff. But other than that, like anything that's open source, everyone can reuse it. I also like want to highlight, like with this CC technology, I mean, you know, like for example, stable coins, it's a pretty like a big topic right now. There are like so many different like stable coin tags, right? With a collateralized, algorithmic stable coins and so on. These are things, I mean, every single stablecoin solution that you see out right now can be implemented with Komodo. It really in no time, right? So the tech is here. We have like so many different CC plugins that combined with each other, or even in a single use, give you these capabilities that we see out right now, right? With all these DeFi platforms and so on, right? That's something you could say Komodo is already ahead of the time, right? I mean, you know about AtomicDEX. I'm sure you heard about our third generation cross-chain atomic swap exchange, right? That's like one of these examples. If you build with Komodo on our blockchain platform, you'll have AtomicDEX, you know, full compatibility. That means you have an interoperability layer that connects your blockchain and the entire Komodo ecosystem to all the entire UTXO space, you know, Bitcoin, Litecoin, all these Bitcoin protocol-based chains, but also second and third generation chains, talking about Ethereum, all ERC contracts, right? That's all supported now, today, right? In an almost production-ready multi-kind mobile wallet, right? Available on Google Play Store as well, on iOS. That's Komodo. When you ask me what's Komodo, I'll tell you this is Komodo.
Yeah, you broke down a lot there, and I definitely want to get into kind of how you go about acquiring developers and users now that you have that tech stack there, right? Because that's the crux, right? Ethereum has this huge community, and we have smart contract platforms, you know, on layer one, and that is a question we want to get to. But before we get into that, I do want to break down this tech a little bit more, because there is some other things that Komodo does, which is like delayed proof of work, where you're kind of signaling to the Bitcoin network to secure the actual network, which I think is really unique. And so I would like you to break that down, as well as kind of
course,
the one point that you made that I hadn't heard from any other smart contract platform, is that the specific smart chain or the chain that is built on top of Komodo can live independent of Komodo. That's one thing I haven't heard from any smart contract platform. So what's the importance of then that smart chain signaling back to Komodo, or does that happen at all?
Okay. The only reason for that is basically security, right? I'm glad you mentioned dPoW, the delayed proof of work algorithm. That's a system we've implemented a few years ago, right? With just one reason, or with one goal in mind. I mean, you know, we've seen like double spend attacks in previous years, right? Repeatedly. So what happens? A malicious actor basically deposits coins on an exchange or sends this to a trading party. And the other party will basically think, okay, the coins arrived, and will either send you something back in exchange, or deposit it on your balance amount in the exchange, etc. And then the next step, the hacker will basically roll back your blockchain, right? Roll back your blockchain. So he basically mine a second chain, which much more high power, which would be the longest chain according to the consensus rules. It will keep it offline just until you think it arrived and until he got what he wanted. I mean, I've read about some even like basically wait for the deposit to be on the account on the exchange, then dump it quickly, you know, against Bitcoin, this, that, and then put in the withdrawal request. When that's signed as in process, that's when they basically put the malicious fork online, right? Like the hackers. That's how they basically conduct this sort of attack. And we said, okay, we're gonna like implement something that will like mess up with these plans. So we've designed dPoW, which basically takes your blockchain header information and creates a sort of a backup into the Bitcoin blockchain. And from then on, your blockchain will basically use the Bitcoin blockchain for the chain validation, just to make sure, okay, is this a correct chain, etc. Okay, this is basically this delayed proof of work. Why delayed? Because we basically collect like all the chain information. So we basically collect it from Komodo. We take the Komodo chain information and store the Komodo chain information into the Bitcoin blockchain. And this like an interval, basically every block that gets mined on the Bitcoin blockchain will contain this Komodo information. Now, all chains that build on top of Komodo, but not only these chains, even third-party chains who have nothing to do with Komodo can utilize delayed proof of work. An example is Einsteinium coin, Gamecoin, Gencoin. These are like third-party independent projects who have nothing to do with Komodo. The only relationship with us is delayed proof of work. Some of them have been attacked this way, and there was financial damage, and they reached out to us and said, look, is this like a potential solution? We said yes. And the hackers that basically conducted these hacks afterwards complained that it's not possible to hack them anymore since they implemented delayed proof of work, right? So it's really nice. There are like a few references online. So if people just Google Forkwich, Geo Hot or Geo Cold, or was his name one of these blockchain hackers, you'll find like all these reports. Very, very interesting. Okay, and delayed proof of work, again, is a feature. It is something that you will enjoy as a Komodo independent chain, but now speaking technically, you don't have to. Like, again, this is like something that we offer as a service, as a solution. There are many chains who don't use this service, but you will have to make sure that you either have a strong enough proof of work ecosystem, enough miners, etc. So 51% it's not possible, or you're using a solid proof of staking algo or something along those lines, just to make sure you're not attackable, right? And again, just to get back to your statement, you said you've never heard about like basically this fully independent chain, right? And why even build it on top of Komodo if it's like fully independent? The thing is, when I even I say build it on top of Komodo, technically you build it beside Komodo. You sort of cloned Komodo over. You got your own Komodo platform. That probably brings it like is a more precise explanation of the process.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Especially with all the security features that comes with it. So, kind of, let's talk about what Q mentioned. Before he asked that question is, what you guys have this tech and have all these great functionalities. How do you attract the developers, the users, to kind of start building on it? And do you see, you mentioned some of the examples of some dApps maybe that could utilize some of the technology. We've seen some early dApps that were kind of mostly like gambling. You'll see like dice or like casinos or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of starting to fade away. Do you see like maybe something new that's coming out in terms of what segment that you guys are looking to capture specifically with your tech? Maybe some dApps that are going to be coming out, to be hot on the networks, and you guys are looking to, capture that crowd.
I'd say the currently most popular topic, and also based on the outreach, right, that we're seeing and external clients that are reaching out to us, is definitely decentralized financial applications. That's like something that's like very interesting. I'm unfortunately under NDA in order to make like very precise like expressions right now, but there is definitely stuff coming. Yes, that's something I can give you 100% yes on, right? Also the question that like how do you get like devs to build on top of this stack? And I mean, we've been building this stack for over half a decade. Okay, most of us have been around for 6-7 years, like from the core team in this space. Again, like our cross-chain and cross-protocol atomic swap exchange is third generation technology, and we've been building this stack for so long time. So we didn't really initially like target and say, okay, we want like immediately like to get this hype, because we said, hey, tech's not there. Imagine you build like production applications on a half-baked tech. You know what's going to happen? What you can read on CoinDesk and CCN every second day. You know what I mean? They launched. Oh, they shut it down again. They launched. Oh, they got wrecked again. You know what I mean? We don't want to make these mistakes, right? I mean, mistakes do happen, and even we've had like one small one like many years back, and we figured we hacked our own users to give them their coins back, right? You know what I mean? Like, we're not keen on just hyping something overly without any solid base. But now we feel we reached a point where our technology is becoming like very mature. It's reaching like the level for ultimate production readiness. So one of the things we're doing right now is that we're basically targeting the entire Ethereum ERC community as well. So we do have goals of basically allowing a Solidity dev to build on top of Komodo without having to learn C, C++, etc., right? Just use the knowledge and skills you already collected as during your work in the Ethereum ecosystem and just build on Komodo, right? That's something that we are working right now on, right? That's something that's still like sort of pie in the air, but it's stuff that's like coming. And again, DeFi, it's like a very, very hot tech layer right now. I personally believe that's probably going to be like in the blockchain industry, definitely the sector with the biggest market share.
Yeah, I don't mean to be stepping in front of Dimitri, because I think he had some questions on AtomicDEX here and the liquidity that goes along with that. But I did want to talk about that one point you just made, right? The Ethereum community and trying to attract them to come and build. At what point does the Ethereum dev community say, "Hey, I actually need to do this and I want to do this"? So I wonder how that process actually works.
There are like, I mean, of course, Ethereum dev might ask me why. Like, why the heck should I even like look at your platform, right? And I can give you a list. I can print you out a list. It probably takes some time to get the full list printed out, right? But let's just take a few very essential points out. Point one is the cost factor, right? On Ethereum, you're paying to build stuff, you're paying to operate, execute stuff, and if you stop paying, your platform basically stops running, right? That's something we can agree on, okay? It's like 100% opposite with like Komodo. It's an entirely open and free platform. You don't pay anything for the execution of smart contracts. It's just like I think a very conceptual difference, a big difference, just like from the initial vision of the platform. Another big point is the independence. Again, if you as an external dev, you come and you want to build something up, and you rely on the platform you build on top. Okay, let's say it shuts down, it gets clogged up, right? You don't have any control over nothing, not even the transaction fees. So even the cost factor is something that you can't guarantee to your customers, right? You'd have to say, look, guys, there's a clause that says if shit hits the fan, you could go bankrupt with your platform just by operating it, not even like running any operations. Okay, I mean, it's like absurd, just like if you think about it like from that perspective. So I'd say the cost factor, the strong independence are the two most important points for a developer. And the third point, I think, is basically something that we are targeting and that we say should be like the ultimate reason, like basically the last checkpoint for such an Ethereum dev to say, okay, I'm going to try this shift. And that's basically, you don't have to learn anything new by providing a full Solidity compatibility. So you could basically use the same lang to build a blockchain module, but for Komodo, not for Ethereum. Okay. So these are like our goals, the visions, the idea behind this, right? It doesn't mean we want to steal Ethereum's users and developers and something like that. We don't it's something I've said before. The entire like team of Komodo and also our founder states this is, we do not look at the other platforms, services, and projects as competition. Like, that's really wrong, and we think that's like probably one of the effects of this rotten, spoiled economic, financial, monetary system is basically this entire motivation upon this and that, right? That's like really different. At the end of the day, we're all targeting the same goal, correct? In the blockchain space, like, unless someone always has just dollar signs at the back of the mind, we're all like, if you, let's say, considering their white paper say the truth, we all have the same goals in mind, and that's why we think we shouldn't look at each other like as pure competition. I mean, we're sharing AtomicDEX with other services and parties. We're reaching stable release candidate by the end of this year, and are in talks with different wallet providers, third wallet providers, these aren't Komodo wallets, right? These are like other projects who are basically interested in integrating like AtomicDEX. So we will have like one unified like liquidity pool, one huge DEX network, and they wouldn't have to mess around to start building a DEX from scratch or something like that, while they could use a very stable, like high quality piece of software that's in a third generation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that. One thing that I want to follow up kind of before we get into the DEX is just ask a question about, you mentioned that you don't have to, pay like the fees and so on, right? And we often have this question and kind of the discussion of how, like overall, like the network's success kind of translates maybe back to like the token holders or whatnot, right? Or the foundation. How do they make money? Would it like, building a lot of these things, obviously to progress our industry further is great, but if there's monetary value there as well, that's even better, right? For the
It is
foundation,
important.
right?
Yeah,
So,
of course.
so like, is there some kind of a translation that actually, with the success of what you guys are doing, that's going to kind of translate into the monetary value maybe for you, for the foundation, for the community, or something like that?
Of course. I mean, for the investors, it's been overall great experience, right? Just if we touch base on the financial aspect again, this is like no financial advice, not so
Right.
else, right? We're not recommending anyone to buy anything. Just personal opinion. So, from a financial aspect, right now our initial investors are a couple 100% above, right? But at the peak, it'd been like a couple 1,000% up,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that experience like has been like ultimate like success for them, like from that perspective. For us, for ourselves, for Komodo, although I say, right, we keep the platform open, we do not want like devs, to have to spend like, money, this, that on the platform. You can build like free with it, but we do offer service. For example, we do have an online chain composer where you literally can click, in a couple seconds, you click together your chain, stablecoin chain, gaming chain, this, that, whatever you want. You add another click and you'll have like 10 decentralized nodes spin up on AWS, right? Another click and it's in a block explorer here. Another click and you get like a DEX wallet integrated and stuff like this. And that's stuff where we earn a little bit, like a commission fee, etc. We make like a little bit of profit. Of course, like there's like a foundation, there's a company behind the project like this, right? But then we also have a DEX, right? The DEX, for example, of course, we do target like at some point to have like proper volumes, and there's like a very tiny fee, right, that's being paid in the DEX network for trades. So these are like, again, just two or three aspects where we earn money that goes back into the Komodo ecosystem, right? But also want to highlight that Komodo does, for example, earn things other than Komodo. Let's say we earn Bitcoin, we earn Ethereum's as part of deals, as part of network fees in the DEX, as part of income from our online sales systems, right, that offer multiple crypto payments options. We'll transfer that over to Komodo. So we basically will buy like Komodo with third-party coins. So we definitely like respect the investors and this financial layer as well, right? Although I said, like we try to keep it open, right? I'm personally not very aligned, or I mean, you need to be aligned to the financial world in order to function, right? It's a coexistence. It doesn't work with it saying, oh no, and I'm so strict again. You'll just like run against the wall with your head, non-stop, right? I mean, we have like corporate contracts going on, etc. We have partners in the banking sector, in the traditional banking sector, right? It's required, it's necessary. I even predict that we'll have like a de-gov and a de-regulative layer, right? In the coming year two, maybe, right? We'll get tools provided by SEC, etc., right? Just to attach blockchain platforms and protocols. And basically, because right now, I've said this before, our industry is just not compatible with the traditional financial industry and with the traditional economic system and model. So we need a few middleware layers and like gateways, connectors, and that's where the governments, the authorities need like to basically step up and start integrating this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's very interesting what you mentioned, because we spoke with other protocols, and it's just like, well, they do these announcements. So it's like, well, we've partnered with the government. We're working on like, setting up a private chain for, let's say, the government or different entities or different business
hmm
sectors. But then it's like, well, okay, that's great, but how is that gonna, transfer into the actual success of the network? And that's something they were struggling to kind of, explain. And what you explained, is something that I've kind of, I've thought, myself kind of like, it would be great if that's what the protocols were doing. Even if they set up these, do consulting, let's say for government, do some kind of private chain setups, on private sector or whatnot, and then translate, that what
If
they
we
earn.
don't, you're right. If we don't do this,
Yeah,
blockchain will never reach main adoption. I mean,
yeah,
this I want to highlight this absolutely. Look, most of people in this space, anarchists, this and that. But at the end of the day, we have weekly lawyer accountant meetings, and we live in this world like with you together. And we need to push these boundaries. Like that's something like we do basically by getting involved more and more into traditional industry sector. It's very important. Thanks for touching base on that. And that's something that Komodo is working on a lot. I mean, we have an own business development team, right? We have 3 biz devs, right? Just non-stop, like reaching out to governments, to businesses, corporates, etc., just to drive this what you've just like mentioned.
yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, let's we've been kind of walking around this DEX for a bit now, right? Let's get into it a little bit. AtomicDEX, right? And kind of I looked at it, briefly, and it's interesting setup, because like, from my side, I'm a trader. I deal with exchanges quite a bit, but it seems like the AtomicDEX is kind of targeting maybe a little bit of a different crowd, or maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But from the AtomicDEX side, it seems like it requires quite a bit of steps, in order to kind of get set up, and you kind of have to have a little bit of a technical background, and then when it comes to execution, I mean, it's on a centralized exchange. It's kind of seems to be easier done, and there's like leverage in the other products and features that are available. Where AtomicDEX is like, he's basically waiting to be paired up, and executed with that with that trader. Also, kind of undermines a little bit maybe the liquidity or the speed, because on the centralized exchanges it's maybe easier to be done. What is talk to me about the AtomicDEX. Like, what is kind of like the main value here? What is the market fit for it, right? Who are you trying to attract, and how do you plan to attract liquidity providers to make it better, as far as the liquidity
Okay,
goes?
sure. Okay, so first of all, yeah, let's start like with AtomicDEX. Who do we really target with this? To be honest with you, we're trying to target everyone who wants to exchange crypto tokens. I mean, as for now, we're like on crypto tokens, on coins, uh, with another party, but without any central entity in between, right? That's like basically the target group in a very abstract formula. Uh, at the end of the day, I think that could be everyone, right? That could be like anyone. AtomicDEX, I mean, it depends also now which AtomicDEX are we looking at. We have AtomicDEX Mobile, which is basically a multi-kite wallet for smartphones, for Android as well as with iOS. That setup basically doesn't require anything, right? I mean, we've had people having their grandmothers use it. Yeah, really. So it's like really easy, very easy to set up, and but also the trading experience, the swap itself, right? It's just an overly simple experience, right? So an absolute noob could basically use it to either exchange, very trustless in a safe environment, or also just use it to receive sent tokens, just as a crypto portfolio, basically. We also have something that's called AtomicDEX Pro. That's running in a sort of a public alpha program right now. That's a desktop version of AtomicDEX, of the end user product. It's an open source wallet as well, multi-kind, etc. That already has like a little bit of additional like features integrated, right? And we're targeting also, just additional functionality. I mean, we all know a DEX is just different than a centralized exchange, because on a centralized exchange, you literally have just like database requests go, and that's all that's happening, like some database operations and some like engine, but there's no real cryptographic operations, no blockchain, no confirmations. There's no miner who's basically gonna validate this transaction that's gone through, right? So with a centralized exchange, you don't have control over your funds, right? If that is a price someone is willing to pay, right? So basically give away all your coins to the exchange and give him the full control over your coins, right? If exchange get hacked, your coins are gone, right? Worst case, they're gone. You'll never see them again. And it would be like our own fault if that happened, right? If we did it with decentralized exchange, this is like completely different. So I think the price we're paying, right, on the user experience side, and in this case, it's really just time. It's just waiting. It's not overly complex to set up. You don't need to be a technical mastermind to download it. Like anyone can do this, really, right? The only thing I'd ask someone who uses this, like on the smartphone, probably don't put $1 million on AtomicDEX on the same smartphone you're using to watch porns in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, don't do this. That's like a bad thing, right? That's something we should all know, right? So again, I mean, there are, of course, things to keep in mind when using this technology. But at the end of the day, I think that a DEX, that the AtomicDEX, just properly used, gives you almost the same experience as with a centralized exchange. Let me tell you why. With something that's called a trust API, right? That provides something named a zeroconf module. Okay. This just means that if I want to trade with parties that I know, that I do trust, I can basically whitelist their public keys and our trades will be instant. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you could even have like, let's say someone sets up a corporate derivatives trading firm, wants to run it through a DEX. We'll have a KYC database with all corresponding public keys. And this trading sub-network is able to instantly trade with other billions, if required trillions, right? Through the DEX protocol without any delay, right? So again, as for the liquidity question, we've basically made AtomicDEX natively compatible with centralized exchanges. So what does this mean? You can take your API key, okay, and you give your DEX node this API key, sorry, to basically attach to centralized exchanges. Now, let's say your DEX node could, let's say, be listening to the requests in the DEX network and market. Let's say someone wants to buy specific coins, which where there aren't orders up. So your node could literally instantly buy coins from a centralized exchange and open up an order, with a little margin. And that's what some people are doing now with AtomicDEX. I mean, most of the volume right now are some very early arbitrage traders. They are literally mirroring the Binance Bittrex order books to the DEX network with a little margin, and you can see it, based on the volumes, you sometimes notice, okay, this is like a mirror, and just like 5% up, right? Again, and I think when other people like bot traders, right, when they notice this, I mean, we haven't made any hype or any sound around this feature, this tech, but I think when bot trader notices, wow, you know what, I can just configure my bot and that's it. He'll be running like 24 hours, and whatever opportunity is here, he's gonna like fetch it. I mean, 5%, I'll do it like for 2%, right? That's what like traders will start thinking. And we think this should like drive it, because again, I do not believe that decentralized exchanges is gonna like take over the industry in no time and leave the central. No, that's not gonna happen. But the things I just mentioned now, bridging order books, mirroring them over to the DEX, creating a sort of a virtual unified liquidity pool between the centralized exchanges and the DEX network. That's like what pushes the boundaries and gets us to the next level, and that's stuff that's coming, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love everything you said there. I'm all for aggregating different books from basically liquidity providers that are centralized exchanges, and then have these people that do arbitrage and between the DEX and the decentralized exchanges to provide more liquidity and whatnot. It's great because at the end of the day, then it puts the centralized exchanges into an interesting environment where they basically have to compete for the volume, right? And make sure that they're providing enough liquidity and competitive pricing, because we've seen in the past just recently where you have on like platforms like BitMEX, or things go down, right, and then it stops trading, and Bitcoin is traded at one price there, while the rest of the market is trading at a different price, right? And there hasn't been really much punishment for these type of liquidity providers in our market
Yeah.
just yet. But I think with more, development of what you're mentioning, aggregating volume and bringing, people to this platform where you pull in from multiple LPs, and then you choose, like, okay, these guys, they give trash quotes all the time. Their liquidity is so bad. Let's cut them off, right? That's it. So, and this would be a natural progression for the market to kind of decide, which liquidity providers it should reward, and the ones that are not going to, screw you over. Because also there's another thing where you can have market makers on those centralized exchanges that probably see your orders and see how leveraged certain users are, and they might mess around with the order books a bit just to juice you on that, which is huge, which creates a conflict of interest. But then when you aggregate all of them and they're all competing, then that kind of takes it out. So I love, all of that, thought behind it, and the idea, of the atomic DEX, and I can see, like, the value of it more now.
Awesome. I'm glad. And I really believe that we together, if everyone keeps these goals in mind, basically become part of the other side of the system, you know what I mean?
Right.
And change it from the inside, right? Because we're gonna force them to change at some point when they see, oh damn, they're just mirroring our like order books. We can't do anything about this. They'll start, for example, implementing like multi-sig solutions where they don't have full control anymore over the funds, but the user keeps a partial control outside of the trading timeframes, and all these things that I think are implementable so easily, where you basically could win a lot of trust back. At this point, I think many don't want that because it's huge power. Imagine this huge extreme power with hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. If you're even like legally allowed to use this for other operations, we talk about big numbers, right? I mean, I'm sure you're aware. Oh, this looked awesome now when you put the glass of bottle up. I love that with the green, green box effect. It was genius. It was really nice.
Yeah, we had that. This was a fascinating discussion, guys. This past like 5-10 minutes, and I think the non-custodial like utility of it is a very easy sell. And I think one thing that's coming up, within the industry right now is the privacy factor, right? Zero knowledge proofs and all these things. I think those that utility could really find itself, leading to more DEX adoption. To be honest, because I don't know what the thesis is there for centralized exchanges adopting these things. I don't think that's not what's going to happen there. So I think we've touched on a lot from Komodo, and I do want to kind of hop out before the episode. But the last thing I want to touch on is what we probably should have said in the beginning, and that Komodo is kind of essentially a fork of Zcash, right? So what is your what is your take on this privacy aspect, the zero knowledge proofs that I mentioned earlier? What's your take on privacy and where that lands on Komodo?
Okay, so privacy has always been one of the main pillars of Komodo. It's like been really one of our main visions that freedom and privacy, being liberal. These are things that go hand in hand. And I mean, privacy is like a human right from our perspective. Like everyone should like enjoy it. That is why we choose basically Zcash. I mean, we changed it heavily. We modified the entire core, right? If you put like Zcash besides like Komodo, like nothing is like it was before, right? So we have a very, very close relationship and also an official collaboration with the Zcash team. That's something that we really love. Like we love this community, soul. At some point, we as Komodo decided to remove the privacy feature from the native Komodo chain, just from KMD, out of one reason. It was basically a lot of respect, for the investors, for the traders, for this layer, because multiple legislations started to make a little bit of a problems, and thus centralized exchanges were forced to sort of delist privacy tokens and coins like from the trading environment. This was like a threat where we said, okay, I mean, that's a price we're willing to pay. We removed it from Komodo, but we kept it as a plugin for Komodo chains. So what happened is there was a chain created. It's called Pirate. And the Pirate chain is like 100% privacy chain. It doesn't have the transparent transactions, right? So it's even like it has a higher privacy level than Zcash in its original version. This is a Komodo ecosystem project, and you're able to basically take Komodo, transfer them over to Pirate, do your Pirate transactions, and transfer back. I mean, it's something you can do with any other currency, with Bitcoin, with Litecoin. You can just transfer it to Pirate, do whatever you want to do to keep your privacy, and transfer it back.
Got it. Okay. Well, I appreciate that answer on privacy, and I do again think that that's going to be a sector and a process that's going to be evolving over time. And I look forward to seeing what you guys do with privacy on Komodo. This has been a great conversation. Obviously, with the conversations that run over an hour, we know that we're having good talks. But let's hop out of Komodo before we end the episode here. What is your take kind of on the crypto market as it stands now, Bitcoin adoption as it stands now, and just give us your take in general on crypto markets?
Okay. So on the crypto markets, I highlight this. That's my motto is you need to fully distinguish between market and technology in order to get the real potential of this technology and the entire industry, right? If you peg like market to tech, you'll never really understand what this is. This is like really my main motto for crypto technology. Don't look at the market if you want to know if a token or project is valuable or not. Look at the code, right? That's what everyone should take with. We just had the halving, right? Just now, the halving just passed. I mean, we haven't seen much like movement as expected. I think the entire crypto community, as well as the traders, were expecting a sort of a pump or a hype, according to what I like heard from people. For community sentiment, that's what I get like personally, right? My personal subjective perception. I think many people were disappointed. But I also think that the huge majority isn't disappointed because they do understand the potential of the tech, right? Whoever hasn't like dumped yet and haven't left the industry and is still here, still trying to build on top of this, I think gets the potential, right? I mean, I hope that this spoiled ICO time is over and that we all can get like back to just like build great technology.
Yeah, absolutely. We had Zach from BlackFi was talking about, how we had that Black Thursday, for Bitcoin, and we fell, 50% in one day, and then we came out of that, and the kind of silver lining there, the fact that this happened and Bitcoin did not die is like a huge testament, to how this thing works, and then overall, like you mentioned, right now, the pricing for certain project is obviously ran a lot by speculators and so on, right? So most of them don't understand the tech, don't understand the code, right? And really they tried to do valuations based on the token price, which is really not the correct valuation at all.
Yeah.
Really, there's no way, I think right now at the moment, to properly value a project that can give us like a specific value where the token kind of should be priced, right? And a lot of people are trying to use financial instruments and economics and all that stuff to do it, where they quickly to find out that stuff doesn't
doesn't work. Yeah,
work. Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, I love that make that distinction for those people that at
Very
the end of the day,
important. Yeah.
Very important to keep in mind. So you mentioned DeFi is a hot topic, right? We always kind of talk about what is the next sector you think is going to be hot or is coming up right now in crypto, that you kind of have an eye on, that maybe some people might not be noticing. I mean, DeFi is definitely well known. Maybe if there's other sectors that you see, maybe NFTs or something else that's blowing up, and starting to get warmer and hotter, as things kind of progress in crypto overall markets. We've seen stablecoins obviously did really well because, overall it's kind of goes with the macro thing that's going on right now with the US dollar and the global slowdown and all those things. So what's your perspective on what do you see something that's it's starting to get more traction than before during this time?
I mean, in general, I personally believe, there are like the list of use cases like limitless. As for hot topics, some things that I now see in sort of this post-pandemic world, I believe, like we have like sectors like supply chain tracking management, something. But I also believe, that as a sort of a subcategory, right, of maybe DeFi, DGov. Let's stick to DGov. I think that's probably like the next big thing when you see like official authorities utilize the technology for whatever, right? Maybe like tracking people, like I'm a bad example, in a trustless way, immutable, like it's a solid piece of information and data. No, jokes aside, but I hope you know what I mean, right? I think that's something, because I think now where DeFi got so hot, right? If the traditional industry financial layer wasn't targeting our industry, we wouldn't have let in. Okay, so that's probably an indicator that we'll see this a small push towards this direction.
Gotcha, Kadan. And we won't take your cypherpunk badge away for mentioning that.
But, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. The last two questions. We noticed in our research that I believe you reside in Austria. What is the cryptocurrency community like there, in the surrounding areas?
Okay, so I mean, I've been living like out of Austria like for a long time. I've been like in Spain, very active in Spain. I've lived like for the last 3 to 4 years, like a lot in Spain and Northern Europe. So I mean, right now, yes, you're right. Like I'm here in Zurich, like right to Austria, like right just next. It's like a few kilometers, at the border. I'm at the very, very western part of Austria, and I've had my first meetups. I mean, it was like small. It wasn't a real meetup. It was like a small table, 3-4, crypto nerds, if you want to put it like that. It was in 2013, 2014. That was the last time I had like, these social interactions in the crypto community here, like in this specific area. However, I do know like from a couple of friends, like also like from family members, that there are now like very active, huge meetings, like in Liechtenstein, like it's also like around the corner, right here, at the Swiss border. In Austria general, I mean, I'm sure you're aware. If you check Meetup.com, you'll see like not one or two. I mean, back in the day, it was just like Bitcoin or blockchain meetup. But now you have like very specific meetups, very specific communities, right? In this area, people who build like smart contracts, or even like build specific products on a blockchain technology. So yeah, it's exciting. It's great. It's really
Nice.
great.
Yeah, that's good to hear that things are progressing there. So, and usually the last question that we hit all of our guests with is a book recommendation. So, if you have a book recommendation that can be related to crypto, not be related to crypto, it could be a fiction, something that maybe had an impact on you, or you'd want to share with some of our listeners.
Okay, because when you said like a book recommendation, because a few days, I gave my oldest daughter, like a book. Because she wanted a new book to read, and she's like quite young, but I felt like she's reached like the time to read it. Again, it's not related, to really science fiction or mathematics or something that you expect from me, or even coding. I mean, I read interesting books, like also like in philosophy from Kant. I mean, I read the works of Kant, the imperative category. I'm sure you know about this, philosophical stuff, and it was J.R. Tolkien's trilogy of
Nice.
I love that.
I mean,
I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
The big thing is the how precise and detailed everything was structured. Having an own language, own species of different creatures, and even they had different cultures and the other different, like the way and how detailed it was made. To be honest with you, when I read it like as a young human, I sort of like believed it. Like during the time I was reading it, you were in this world. Yes, because it was so detailed. You would tell yourself, no way someone's gonna come up with it, right? So J.R. Tolkien, I think also why did I recommend it to my daughter? Because I know he wrote it out of love for his kids.
Mhm.
That was like the main reason. So I think if someone like written a book that's been so successful, even like ended up in one of the most successful films, and wrote it out of love, right? Not out of money motivation or because of bestseller, blah blah, out of love, then it must be like something great. And yeah, I've just like did this 2 days ago. Again, this is really not related to crypto or anything, but it's a great book, and it's something that humans who don't read it often should read.
Easily my favorite book recommendation on the show so far, and I appreciated what Peter Jackson did with the movies too, because a lot of times what you see is the book, the movie is nowhere near,
nowhere near, but I think they tried, like, but you can't. You need to read the book. I mean, it's a great movie. It's amazing. But with the book, if you read the book and watch the movie afterwards, you'll be disappointed.
That's usually how it goes.
Absolutely. So before we end, let the listeners and viewers know where they can find more about you as well as Komodo.
Okay, so I'm known as CA333 in the community, on GitHub, on Bitcointalk, etc. On Twitter, I'm OXCA333, basically in hexadecimal format. And we are like komodoplatform.com/Discord. That's where all our talks, discussions, debates take place. That's where you like find and get to know like a lot of same-minded, good people, like really amazing place. And yeah, again, guys, Dimitri, thank you so much for this talk. It was over an hour, but it was like really great. It went so fast because it was like very interesting, and I loved it a lot. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on the episode and really sharing all the wealth of information you've kind of gained over the last 10, 12 years in crypto. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you.
If someone is in a galaxy far, far away, please save this man. He is on an Imperial starship somewhere. So if you can save him. But Kadan, this was a great conversation, and we should have you back here shortly. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to check out Layer 1 on all the audio and video platforms listed in the description. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next week.